Greetings and welcome and salutations and all that kind of stuff. Here we are, another episode of Coco and Daltz. For another episode, I'm not Coco.
I'm not Daltz.
And you know what we're going to do this week?
What are we going to do this week?
For this special podcast.
How is this a special podcast?
This is more specialer than other special podcasts that we've done.
Well, don't make people think that all our other podcasts aren't special, because then they won't listen.
No, it's more specialer.
Oh, okay. So they're all special, but this one's super duper special.
This one's special on steroids.
Ooh.
So
it is baseball season.
Opening day, not far in our rearview mirror. So what we're going to do for this special episode...
What?
We are going to look at the 1995 Oscars, the Academy Awards that were handed out in 1995 for, theoretically, movies and productions that were in 1994.
1994, a huge year.
So that was a huge year. And we want to look at, for you, the listener, our dedicated listeners across this vast country of ours and perhaps even around the world.
We do have drunken Swedes.
Yes, what happened to our drunken Swedes anyways? Were they...
I don't know, I think they
Did they get back to us? Or
I think they abandoned us.
They probably did.
Yeah.
So we want to look at 1995 because this is why, dear listener, the Best Picture nominees for 1995 are...
I've actually seen all of them, which is kind of a rarity. And
so have I. And so that's why we're doing this particular year, because we'll know what we're talking about.
That's why we picked this year to kick off this special recurring series of looking back at Best Picture nominees in any given year.
And so that is only 23 years for us to see all 5 movies.
Well, I saw pretty much 4 of them when they were released, and then I saw the last one like last weekend. So
the nominees for Best Picture for 1995,
yes,
the Academy Awards, are, in no particular order, although if you know who won, you know why I'm reading them in this order.
Okay.
Forrest Gump, 4 Weddings and a Funeral, Pulp Fiction, Quiz Show, and The Shawkshank Redemption.
I think that was actually also alphabetical order, so I don't.
Was it really?
So I don't think it matters that Forrest Gump was first, because it was actually first alphabetically as well.
Well, no, PQ, maybe. S comes after. It comes at the end there. So does S come after Q alphabetically?
Yes.
PQRS?
Yeah, as does T if you were going by The Shawshank Redemption.
So this is the hard-hitting kind of analysis that you tuned in to listen to.
Only one of us has had an alcoholic beverage today, and it's not the one you're probably thinking of, as a matter of fact.
So, dear listener, who do you think was, if you don't know, who won, which picture won for Best Picture there?
Breaking news.
1995 Oscar results are just in.
Well, after that envelope mix-up last year,
right?
You never know.
Right. So, Forrest Gump won for Best Picture that year.
Yes.
Discuss.
How do you feel about that?
Wait a minute. I asked you first.
I don't know that I would have chosen that.
Which one would you have chosen?
I probably would have chosen Shawshank.
So, based on what?
Forrest Gump, it seems like, was the safe choice. Like, it was very sentimental.
Right.
It was kind of schmaltzy. Like,
had wide appeal.
It was very broadly appealing, especially to a particular older demographic that was probably a core constituency of Oscar voters.
Right.
So I see why that one was chosen. I think I would have chosen Shawshank because there was a level of sentimentality to it, but it wasn't quite so brazen. And I enjoyed the story, and I enjoyed that you didn't know, if you hadn't read the Stephen King book, I don't know how closely it adhered to the Stephen King book. If there was going to be a happy ending, what was going to happen. You know, and the performances were just fantastic. I can't say enough about Tim Robbins and Morgan Freeman in that movie. So I understand the argument for Pulp Fiction winning, because it kind of came out of nowhere and it was so different and it was so awesome. But
yeah,
I think if I had been voting, I probably would have checked off the box for Shawshank.
Is this some sort of effect that because you most recently saw The Shawshank Redemption, you are blown away by it?
I don't know how I managed to not see Shawshank until now. One of my roommates in college, that was like her favorite movie. She even had the movie poster on our dorm room wall.
Oh, wow.
So I don't know how I managed to not see it, especially since I've had basic cable for most of my life. And it's always on like TNT or something, but somehow I just managed not to see it until a few days ago when we realized, oh, it's going off Netflix. We better watch it. And I was completely blown away.
So you were that impressed with the movie?
I really was. I would probably put it in maybe my top 10 right now.
Wow.
Yeah, I really, really enjoyed it.
Top 10 this year or top 10 of all time?
Top 10 of all time. I'd say it's probably up there with like Jaws and the first two Godfather
movies
way. For me. Yeah, I really, really liked it.
See, I didn't get that from your reaction. Because when we first shut the movie down and we discussed it and everything like that, you were very calm and measured about it. I thought maybe you would have been doing like cartwheels or flip the couch over or something like that.
It wasn't like the other day when we were podcasting and I was going to beat you about the head and chest with the microphone. Like I didn't have that level of...
Much to my relief.
I didn't actually do that, dear viewer, dear listener. Okay, now you can tell who's been drinking. So what did you think about that list?
So Forrest Gump, 4 Weddings and a Funeral, Pulp Fiction, Quiz Show, The Shawshank Redemption. I understand, again, like you said, I understand why Forrest Gump won. It was a well-done movie, and it was a heartstrings puller.
Yeah.
It had some good writing in it. It was original. The character was original. We had never seen anything like him before in movies before that.
Right. He was probably on the spectrum, and you didn't really see a whole lot of that back in the 90s.
And Tom Hanks was bang on with that role. He was the perfect person to play that role. I can't imagine, somebody else doing that. I know that years later, Sean Penn tried to play somebody who was similarly
I Am Sam
in I Am Sam, and it was a debacle. So there's only a certain kind of actor who can play that role, and Tom Hanks he has that comic sensibility and that sort of thing, and he had good timing
and the gravitas to play like this more serious moments as well.
Right, exactly,
and that's why he won Best Actor.
As with most comedians or former comedians, they make the best dramatic actors, right? I think, anyway. A lot of the Tom Hanks being probably the number one guy who came up from Bosom Buddies. And
I knew you were going to bring up Bosom Buddies.
You knew I was going to bring up. I love me some Bosom Buddies, but that's where he started, and he developed these really good comic sensibilities over time. So I understand why that won, and it was a very influential movie. And in the time that it came out, it was very influential. We heard about the box of chocolates forever and a day after that.
Yeah,
and Sally Field was great in it, and
Gary Sinise.
Gary Sinise was
Lieutenant
awesome
Dan.
as Lieutenant Dan. That was a very career-setting role for him as well. And Robin Wright Penn was in there as well, and she was Robin Wright Penn in those days.
Has she dropped the pen now that she and Sean Penn have gotten divorced?
Yes.
We did not plan to have a Sean Penn subplot in this podcast.
There's always subtext.
It's just kind of spontaneously popped up.
Our podcast always has complicated subtext, so that if you're not seeing the subtext, you get entertained. But if you're listening carefully enough, you also get the subtext.
You should see our complicated flow charts for our podcast topics.
Right, and the producer is waving at me now to speed things up because we don't want to talk. We don't want to reveal our secrets. But it's not always about Marky Mark, the subtext. That's all I got to say.
No, everything is about Marky Mark. Can you imagine Marky Mark as Forrest Gump?
Forrest Gump. Who would be great? Would be Burt Reynolds. With Norm Macdonald playing Burt Reynolds as Forrest Gump.
That would be amazing. Oh my God. Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you want?
Box of chocolates.
Oh my God. We have to do this now.
So, Forrest Gump, understand. 4 Weddings and a Funeral, also a great movie. And you mentioned earlier about Pulp Fiction, which I'll get to in a second. But 4 Weddings and a Funeral also came out of nowhere a little bit.
Yeah.
And we had Hugh Grant for the first time in a prominent role in a movie that was successful in the United States. I loved that movie. I thought it was great. I saw all 5 of these movies in the theater, so I was right up on it. That was the one fluke year that I actually saw all the nominations in the theater. And I loved that movie. It had very interesting characters. There was a gay couple in that movie, which was unheard of in those days. Very interesting characters in that movie too. And if I remember correctly, there was also a woman in a wheelchair was in that movie as well.
I don't remember.
So maybe not, but
I don't think I've seen that actually since it came out.
It's been a while since I've seen that.
Yeah.
That was another one that ran on like TNT forever.
For a
and
long time.
I don't like to watch movies when they're on network TV because they get watered down so much. And
it's 7 minutes of movie and then 10 minutes of commercial.
Right.
It's
what
really...
other art form would you put up with that? Like, would
Right.
you go to the art gallery and then you're looking at a painting and then somebody stands in front of you for 3 minutes and tries to sell you life insurance.
Right.
Like, where would you put up with that? So I'm opposed to that kind of... That's why I like Netflix and Amazon now, because you can just stream all the way through.
Right.
So I love that movie. So where I'm going is Pulp Fiction and Quiz Show and Shawshank Redemption. I think Pulp Fiction, in terms of the influence, that would have been my pick for the Oscar. And just in terms of what you said earlier, but also it was so groundbreaking.
It was.
The story was not linear at all because it circled back around on itself. The dialogue was fantastic.
Right.
The characters you'd never seen before, they were never more interesting than those characters. Samuel L. Jackson with
his first really big breakout role. He was nominated for supporting actor for that.
And he was fantastic in that.
And Travolta's career resurgence. He'd been in the Look Who's Talking movies before that. Like
you said, career resurgence.
Yeah, his career had dwindled to talking baby movies.
Yeah.
And suddenly he's a leading man again. And he's doing Face Off. And
he became sort of an action star to a certain extent.
Right.
Action movie star. So yeah, I think my pick would have been Pulp Fiction in terms of just pure... This is a tipping point for movies,
right?
Because it showed that you could do a lot of things that weren't being done up to that point. Like Forrest Gump is a very well done movie, but it's a very traditional Hollywood movie,
right? Yeah, it's very. I almost feel like Forrest Gump, like I feel about Quiz Show. Like I liked Forrest Gump better than I liked Quiz Show, but Quiz Show just to me was like very mannered and understated, and it was a very good movie, but I just didn't really feel a lot of a connection really to the characters. Like, and Ray Fiennes was very subtle, and that's what his character called for, but it wasn't. There just wasn't a lot of like emotion for me involved in that. And Forrest Gump was kind of the same way, only...
If it hadn't been Quiz Show, if it had been Wheel of Fortune, do you think you would have been more into it?
No, because then I would have been angry. I would have been yelling at the screen and calling people morons.
Like you do when we watch Wheel of Fortune. Okay. So Quiz Show was directed by Robert Redford, who was also nominated for Best Director for this movie. So I think that has something to do with why it turned out to be more of a traditional Hollywood movie and why it was understated and that sort of thing. What I loved about Quiz Show was, again, smart characters and smart dialogue.
Right. They didn't beat you over the head with the fact that Ray Fiennes wanted to impress his father and was never going to live up to his father's expectations. Like, you got that if you paid attention to the movie, but it wasn't him falling down on his knees like, Dad, what can I do?
It wasn't so obvious. And there's a scene where him and his dad get together. He comes, he's tortured with guilt about getting the answers ahead of time, for those who don't know Quiz Show.
Spoiler alert.
And major spoiler alert. He's tortured by this, and he meets with his dad, and they have there's a scene where they have chocolate cake together. And it's a very interesting dynamic because the food is part of it, but also the characters interacting and father talking to son, and father doesn't really have a clue, and son seeking father's approval. And it's just a lot of interesting stuff going on in that one little scene. And there's a lot of stuff going on in the entire movie that's like that, but it's so understated.
Right.
And it's so very much a Hollywood movie, again, with the characters and the development and the catharsis and all that sort of stuff. So it was, I would say that, and the Shawshank Redemption, you said a lot about it, but just for adding on to it, I really liked it. I liked it the first time I saw it in the theater, and it's a long movie. It's not one that you go into gently, but you can also drop in on it every now and then because it's got good, the first act, second act, third act are sort of compartmentalized. So if you know the story already, you can drop in on. So it's a movie that I've seen bits and pieces of over the years.
Right, and it's a long movie, but it doesn't feel long.
It doesn't feel long.
What did we watch recently that was like 2 hours and 20 minutes, and we were like, man, they could have shaved like a solid 15 minutes off of that, and it would have been...
You know what that was?
What was that?
Bon Cop, Bad Cop 2.
That's right.
The sequel, which we did a podcast about that entire oeuvre, and then the podcast did not work out. So maybe we'll revisit that.
Oh, maybe we could. Yeah, we had technical difficulties, so that's why that hasn't been to your earbuds lately. But yeah, like I don't think Shawshank was as long as Bone Cop, Bad Cop 2. I think it was just a shade over 2 hours, but it didn't feel like it at all.
Yeah.
Like it moved along.
It was well paced, and there was enough tension in it that you felt compelled to stay with it. You didn't want to look away or anything like that. The characters were going in different directions. And Morgan Freeman's performance, as you mentioned, was fantastic. That was one of the first movies that, he came along later, and he was in 7, I believe, after that. And it was,
and he had been in Lean On Me a few years before that, like late 80s. I remember seeing him in that.
But this was, to me, was the first true movie that I had seen, like sort of like a big Hollywood movie that he was in that was fantastic. And he was... To me, he was the lead character. I mean, I know Tim Robbins is the character the story centers around his character, but to me, Morgan Freeman is the heart of that movie because he drives a lot of the action and he's the one who's getting things done. But Shawshank was very well done and very, very picturesque. The cinematography was really good.
Yeah.
The set was really good. You bought that movie. Set was an old prison. It happened to be an old factory in Ohio, I believe it was, in real life, that they used to pretend to be an old penitentiary in Maine. And it was just very well done all the way around. So, but again, circling back, I think that Pulp Fiction, for my money, and I'm not a huge Quentin Tarantino fan. I don't really like much of his work before or after that. I wasn't a huge Reservoir Dogs fan, and some of the pieces that he's done since then, I think, have been kind of more... gory than anything else, and also trying to make a point and by using certain language and certain inflections and that sort of thing. I think he's lost his curveball a little bit, but this was the perfect time for that movie and the perfect scenario, the perfect bringing Samuel L. Jackson to the fore, John Travolta resurging, giving his career a bit of a resurgence. Uma Thurman was fantastic in that, and she played that perfect role. There was nobody else you'd want to see in that role, like not in those days, not like Winona Ryder or Susan Sarandon or somebody like that. You know what I mean? Like there's nobody else going to play that role in those days. So I'm thinking I still like Pulp Fiction the best.
And if you look at that list of 5, one of these things is not like the others. Yes.
Yes.
Like, that's the one that's really just...
That sticks out to me, and that's why I like it the best. Is not necessarily my favorite movie of that bunch. I just think that that's the one that should have won the best picture.
Yeah, I can see that. Shawshank is definitely my favorite movie out of that bunch, but I can see the arguments for Pulp Fiction winning.
Yeah, and I think I agree, too. Shawshank is probably my favorite out of those 5. I liked Quiz Show more than you did. I like them all. I think it would be fair to say that if any of those 5 movies had a run in a different year, they all would have stood a really good chance at being Best Picture.
And I think we should also make it clear that we don't hate that Forrest Gump won. It's not like there are some years where the Best Picture winner is just utterly universally panned, like Crash, which I know you didn't hate.
I didn't hate it, no. And also, we were talking about Shakespeare in Love when that won, and that's also held up as the worst picture or something like that. I actually
don't hate that.
Yeah,
I'm the only person in the world probably who doesn't think that that's an utter outrage.
But that got us thinking about this whole discussion as to what was the best year, and we looked at 95 being perhaps the best year in recent memory for 5 movies, all top quality, all very influential in their own way.
Right.
I mean, you look at probably Quiz Show was the least influential, but that still was a very influential movie. So I think...
And I would also just like to say about Shawshank that we have touched on Morgan Freeman and Tim Robbins, but I really appreciated that you couldn't see them thinking about the actorly process. Like, there are some movies where you can see people thinking, I'm going to take 3 steps, and then I'm going to stop, and my shoulders are going to slump because the weight of the world is on my shoulders, and then I'm going to slightly turn my head and look over my left shoulder, and you couldn't see Tim Robbins or Morgan Freeman doing either one of those things. Like, I was just completely blown away by Morgan Freeman. Like, I might have given him, like, Best Actor if I'd been voting that year. I would have given him Best Actor, I'm not going to lie. So
I think that he deserved it. I think he would have been a solid choice for that.
Right. And I mean, I hate that the Academy does this, but if you want to look at whose turn is it, versus...
And also what they've done previously. And
right. Like, that's why you end up with Al Pacino winning for Scent of a Woman as opposed to one of the Godfather movies or whatever back in the 70s. Yeah. So I hate that the Academy does that, but Tom Hanks won the year before for Philadelphia.
Yeah.
So you could have said, hey, he's got his Oscar. Let's give it to Morgan Freeman for this instead of giving Tom Hanks 2 Oscars back to back. Although Tom Hanks, fantastic actor, we just sang his praises a couple months ago in the Post when we had this very conversation about Tom Hanks and Meryl Streep putting on a master class and acting like that's how it's done.
That's the way it's supposed to be done.
Yeah, so Tim Robbins and Morgan Freeman and Shawshank they just knocked it out of the park. I was incredibly impressed.
Some of the other side characters too, the
Brooks,
who was veteran actor James Whittaker, was fantastic. Also the warden and the head guard. I don't have the cast list in front of me, unfortunately, but our crack research team has gone to the bathroom, I think. But those two guys were really good. And Frank Darabont, we should mention, was the director of that movie. Did not get nominated for that, but the directing was really well done in that movie too. That was a fantastic movie. Just to give people a sense of what else came out that year.
What else came out that year?
Bullets Over Broadway, the Woody Allen movie, was nominated for 7 Academy Awards. No, let's not talk about Woody Allen.
Yeah, I was just about to sigh.
Clear and Present Danger, The Client, Ed Wood, Forrest Gump, of course, Four Weddings and a Funeral, Hoop Dreams came out that year, as did Interview with the Vampire.
Oh, that was a good movie.
Legends of the Fall.
I'm going to say I think Kirsten Dunst should have been nominated for supporting actress for Interview with the Vampire. I know it's controversial to nominate child actors, but I think that's the best she's ever been in anything I've ever seen, honestly.
I've never seen that movie.
Really?
Yeah, I've never seen that movie. I'm not a big Tom Cruise guy.
Yeah, neither am I, but that was a good movie. I enjoyed it more than I thought I would.
So also out that year, Legends of the Fall, The Lion King. As I was discussing earlier, The Lion King got 4 nominations, and it won 2. It was nominated 3 times in the original song category. The same movie was nominated 3 times. That just blows me away. So that was Elton John and Tim Rice, obviously, for The Lion King.
Speaking of schmaltz, like we mentioned earlier, those are some really schmaltzy songs that
The
Lion King got nominated for.
Little Women, The Madness of King George.
Great movie.
The Mask. Nell, Nobody's Fool, which is a great movie, a great book too. The Paper was also nominated. Pulp Fiction, obviously, Quiz Show. Red, which is highly regarded in those days. Shawshank Redemption. Speed came out that same year.
That was a good movie.
Nominated 3 times and won twice. One for sound and sound effects editing. And let's see what else was nominated. True Lies was also out that year.
Oh man!
And Wyatt Earp. So that was a pretty good year for movies.
Yeah, 94 was a good movie. A good year for movies.
1994 was a good year for movies. Exactly. So,
well, can I share an anecdote about Pulp Fiction? Would you like to hear it?
You've heard it before. As long as it does involve French cursing, I'm okay.
It does not. So. I'm only 29 years old, but I began going to college in January of 95, so I'm Doogie Howser-esque. And my college student activities committee was really good about bringing current movies to campus.
Oh, yeah?
Because I went to school in a really small town, and there was only one theater, and they didn't tend to get movies like Pulp Fiction. So we got to see Pulp Fiction on campus, and
cool.
I loved it. And so... the next time I went home for a weekend, my dad and I were going to go see a movie, and we couldn't agree on which movie to go see, and somehow I managed to talk him into Pulp Fiction. And my dad would have voted for Forrest Gump for Best Picture. So 20 minutes into Pulp Fiction, he looks at me out of the corner of his eye, and I'm like, yeah, this isn't going to go well. And he hated it. He hated it so much. And as soon as the lights went back up, he was like, that's 3 hours of my life I'll never get back. So that's my Pulp Fiction story.
That's not the kind of movie that you take a parent to?
No.
That's the moral of that story?
Well, he was only in his 50s then, so...
Don't watch Pulp Fiction with your dad.
Yeah, your dad who wanted to go see, Point Break instead, or whatever it was.
Or Wyatt Earp.
Right, or Wyatt Earp.
He probably wanted to go see Wyatt Earp.
And I made him go see Pulp Fiction, and he didn't laugh at Zed's Dead Baby, or
Bruce Willis, another part of that movie that was great.
Yeah, Bring Out the Gimp. My dad didn't appreciate any of that movie at all.
There were a lot of stuff in there that was just not appropriate. Like the whole Christopher Walken scene with the watch. Right. I want you to take this watch that I carried for your dad.
Yeah. In my ass.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Well, yeah. Yeah.
So there's so many lines from that movie, and I think that Quentin Tarantino gave it all he had in that movie.
Yeah.
He's a very good filmmaker, obviously, and great at dialogue, great at directing. Has made some questionable choices in terms of the whole Kill Bill with Uma Thurman giving her a car that didn't have brakes and all that sort of stuff that we've heard about recently. But there's no questioning, I think, that Pulp Fiction was his finest work.
I can see that. I haven't seen all of his movies, but of the ones I've seen, that's been the one I've enjoyed the most.
So I think that's it for our 1995 Academy Awards. Which movie did you like better? Whole segment there.
So we have not come to a consensus. So
no, there's no consensus, but we gave our opinions.
We did.
And I don't think people would want us to agree on everything.
That's true.
We need some sort of dissension.
That's right. That's what makes America great.
We're dissension.
A melting pot of ideas, and
right. But as long as everybody comes out with the same idea, we're okay.
That's not where I was going with that.
Okay. A melting pot. I thought all the ideas were melting into one.
Oh no. Okay, that's not what I meant. All right,
well,
I totally botched that.
No, I misinterpreted it. So anyway, we hope you enjoyed this special edition of the podcast.
The first in a series of our reflections on Best Picture nominees.
And so log on to, as they used to say, log on to www.cocoandults.com and give us your thoughts on what the next Oscar year we should look at. What should we look at? 2011? Should we look at 1947?
I'm going to say neither one of us has probably seen a movie that was nominated in 47, unless it was like Citizen Kane.
Well, Citizen Kane we should have a special episode for that because that's a movie that is near and dear to my heart.
Really?
Yes, I love that movie.
Okay.
Have you seen it?
I'll try to stay awake for it the next time we watch it then. I didn't really like it. I didn't like Casablanca either, though.
I liked Casablanca less than I liked Citizen Kane. But I still liked it. It's still a very influential movie.
Yeah, I'm not denying that. I didn't happen to get out of it what you have gotten out of it, but
what have I gotten out of it again? My snappy dressing style?
We should we should watch it again. I'd watch it again.
We should do a live podcast while we're watching one of these movies.
I don't think anybody wants to hear that. Maybe we could just live tweet it.
Tweet it.
Yeah,
that's what we could do.
Live tweet Citizen Kane. Rosebud.
So for another week, we hope you enjoyed this episode of the podcast. I'm not Coco.
And I'm not Daltz.